Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabriel, coming at you straight from Queens, New York, and today we are going to be doing something a little bit unorthodox. It's going to be a simple reading, and what we are going to be reading is the Declaration of Independence in Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. We are doing this to answer or to debunk some common myths held about the Declaration of Independence. Among these are that the Constitution is old-fashioned, that it's a living document and must change with the times, and that it's a complicated document. Right? These are like three of the most widely held myths about the Declaration of Independence. It's also true for the Constitution, but the Constitution is way longer than the Declaration. So we are going to just do the Declaration today, and I'm literally just gonna read it. Maybe I'll make a couple comments here and there, but I'm pretty much just gonna read it. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind require that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's important to note that it said among these are, right? This isn't an exhaustive list of the unalienable rights that have been endowed to us by our Creator, right? These are just ones that the founding fathers felt that they should make special note of: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that government long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariable the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyrant over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for accommodation of large districts of people. Now, this part of the Constitution is where they list, I think it's 27 things that the king is doing that. Like these are like basically like this is what they're charging him with, right? This is how you effed us, right? These are the things that you've done wrong. This is why we want our freedom from you, because these things that we're going to list here are all things that you have done that are bad. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the rights of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with many firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise. The state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislature. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and acknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. And then that last one has we're going to list now some of what was just said. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English law in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the form of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring them invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun, with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our foreign frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. I have never heard that word before. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and we hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the states of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliance, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of the divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. 56 signatures in the Declaration of Independence, and they appear in the order as follows. From Georgia, we have Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton. North Carolina, William Hopper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn. South Carolina, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., Arthur Middleton. From Massachusetts, John Hancock. From Maryland, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll of Carrollton. Virginia, George Rife, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, and Carter Braxton. From Pennsylvania, we have Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Ross. From Delaware, Caesar Rodney, George Reed, Thomas McKean. New York, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, Lewis Morris. New Jersey, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, Abraham Clark. From New Hampshire, Hampshire. I can never say that state. Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple. From Massachusetts, we have Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne, Elbridge Gerry, or Jerry. Sorry if I'm butchering these names, by the way. I don't mean to insult anybody. From Rhode Island, we have Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery. From Connecticut, we have Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams. Your parents. Oliver Wolcott. And from New Hampshire, wow. Okay, we have Matthew Thornton. Okay. That's just the reason why some of them, like New Hampshire, New Hampshire, appear in multiples because the book that I'm reading, by the way, is this book. I showed it before on my channel. This is the book that I'm reading. That's the information there. Dan Clark put this book together. So yeah, that's the Declaration of Independence. As you can see, it's a very well written document. It doesn't, contrary to popular belief, it doesn't need to change because it was dealing with the issues of the time. And when it doesn't deal with the issues of the time, it deals with issues that are timeless. For example, the document in the first two paragraphs basically says four things. The book points them out. 1. Rights come from God. 2. The purpose of civil government is to secure those rights. 3. The power of civil government is given by the consent of the governed, each of whom is fully entitled to rule. 4. The right to govern is forfeited by a tyrant to lower civil magistrates in order to restore the rule of law. Okay, so it was written in such a way that it made it clear that government isn't there to give you your rights. Your rights have existed before this document was written. Government is there to make sure that certain rights that are within their power to protect are in fact protected. So that was the whole Constitution, by the way. I mean, not the Constitution, the Declaration. That was the entirety of the Declaration of Independence. So no, it is not a complicated text to read. It doesn't need to be interpreted. It is very straightforward. Very straightforward. You can read it in a couple of minutes. Do it. It's read it yourself, take some notes, put some stickies, and understand the country, the foundation of the country which you live in. Right? This country was made to escape tyranny for all. It's written in words right there. All. There is no mention of race in the Declaration. The Declaration almost exclusively deals with the government and the powers to rule. That's it. That's all it's about. So, thank you for watching, and that's all from me, man.